Okay, good morning, everybody. Nikki Burnett here. Today is Taste Life Nutrition Radio and Podcast streaming live on KUHSdenver.com. Today, we are going to continue our conversation about the microbiome. Back a couple of weeks ago, we were speaking with Jen regarding SIBO. And so I've been doing a significant amount of digging into deeper research on the microbiome, on infections, on what we can do to support our microbiome. But what keeps coming up is not necessarily what we can do to support, but what can we do to stop eliminating it. And that's a lot of what's happening, is we are just consistently eliminating and kind of almost bringing to extinction our own microbiome, right? With the things that we don't often realize are problematic for us in our daily lives. And so I think that it's an important topic. And so probably I might not even get through all of this. This might go on for a while. When I'm doing this, when I'm doing the show by myself, this might just be the topic for a while because there's so much to talk about. So, first and foremost, I want to get to my notes here. So, I think, of course, we got to start the show with gratitude. I forget about that sometimes. And today I have been trying to make a habit of getting up in the morning and getting up early enough to where I'm going outside and I'm taking my Bible, which is actually a Bible app, so I'm taking my phone, and then my devotional, and sit outside. So we're sitting outside before the 10 a.m. sunrise, before 10 a.m. sun, right? So early 10 a.m., that helps with circadian rhythm, and just good to get that sun in your eyes. So, and then doing some reading and some meditating and that kind of thing. So that's something that I've been really grateful for, is just trying to be more intentional about that. And then not as often as I would like, but more often than we used to, my husband and I are able to go outside and do that together, which is really nice. Going and we'll talk a little bit and we'll read a little bit and we'll discuss a little bit, and sometimes we're reading the same things and sometimes we're not. We're always on the same day of the same devotional, but sometimes we go to different places in our Bibles. So that's been a really fun thing. It's been quite some time of working on just making these things, making it a habit. And it's still not even the best habit, because this morning I didn't get to go out and do it. With having the show and prep beforehand sometimes throws me off, but most days that's what we're doing. And so it's habits are often just so gradual. We don't want them to be gradual. We want them to happen immediately, and they don't. So I pray a lot for just creating the better habits. As part of my prayer time is how can you help me create my better habits and do things better every day and get better every day. And so they come in time, right? But so I'm grateful for that, and I'm grateful obviously for the time I get to spend with my husband and in this kind of really cool, calm setting, right? The rest of life is never cool and calm, but this is good. So I was reading a book, or I've been reading it. Actually, I just finished it, but it's a book called Super Gut. And I also am part of a group, Functional Medicine Grand Rounds, where we come together and we discuss cases, complicated cases. And so this is, if you're a practitioner out there and looking for a group where you discuss cases and come together and learn from each other, this is a great group. Fairly new, and having some really interesting conversations, and have really learned a ton. But there's a lot of focus and a lot of deep dive on the gut and the microbiome. And it's an interesting realization for me. I always say we always have to ask why. If you know me at all, we don't settle for this is just what it is. We always want to ask why, and we always want to dig deeper into the causes or the root causes or the foundations of health, that kind of thing. And I always know I always know there's more because I know some stuff, but there's so much that I don't know. And to be surrounded by people who are so smart and so willing to give of their knowledge and their time and their information, and all coming together to share and opening up a whole new world around the microbiome for me. Whereas I think I'm pretty good. There are a lot of bugs in there that I just know nothing about, but have a pretty good understanding of the necessity of a good, healthy, robust, functional, happy microbiome, and many of us don't have it. And sometimes I wonder, even for myself, I'm like, is it really as happy as it could be or should be? And I would say no. There's more I can do, and so I'm always working on it. I have been, through situations where I've had some pretty significant GI issues. I'm in a place right now where things seem to be pretty calm and pretty easy, but I still want to make sure that I'm giving it all that it needs. And sometimes it's hard to know what that looks like. And so, in digging into learning and understanding at a deeper level what the microbiome needs, I think that what we often miss, or there are a couple of things, right? We as providers, we prescribe, right, probiotics. We want people, especially if we get a GI panel back and we see that the gut microbiome is off, we might have to go through a kill protocol because of infection. We might have to go through a rebuilding protocol. But are we missing what is actually feeding the microbiome? And I think a lot of times we are. So we hear about prebiotics, we hear about probiotics, we hear about postbiotics, probably hear about postbiotics less. And so to understand the difference between those, so we can understand that our probiotics are the bugs that can support, are a part of their community in our gut, or for women in the vagina, or for our oral microbiome, right? We've got our skin microbiome. We've got a microbiome all over us, and we have these bugs that are there intentionally to support us and to keep us healthy. And then, they support, vitamin production. They support neurotransmitter production, right? We have 90% of our serotonin, which is our happy hormone, is produced in the gut. So if our microbiome is off, if our bugs aren't happy, if we don't have enough diversity, then we're going to probably be lacking in good, healthy serotonin. And so what can that do? That can lead to cravings, things that we're craving foods that help to boost serotonin. And so we don't understand why we're craving things, right? So you can go down the list of symptoms that these things can create that we just don't realize are an issue with the bugs in our gut. So probiotics, and then we have prebiotics. Prebiotics are what feed our bugs. So you think polyphenols. Polyphenols are undigested. This is what's super interesting, I think. So I think of polyphenols as antioxidants. They support our body. What really is, though, that we don't digest polyphenols. They're not for us. They're for our microbiome. So fascinating stuff, right? So we feed our bugs polyphenols so they can be robust and help to take care of us. And so, polyphenols are, the bright colored vegetables and fruits, and there's polyphenols in olive oil. Eat olive oil. Don't cook with it, but eat lots of olive oil. It's got some really interesting stuff in it. I also learned, a little off the topic, but it has, it's supportive of our endocannabinoid system. Didn't know that. In my mind, if you don't know the endocannabinoid system, we've got, the cannabinoids. You've got your THC and your CBD. I'm sure most of you have heard of those things. And then you've got these other cannabinoids, right? So they support our endocannabinoid system. Well, olive oil, and I don't remember the component, so don't ask me, I just learned this, but olive oil has a component in it that is supportive of the endocannabinoid system. Fascinating stuff. So much fun to think that what we do every day, good or bad, is impacting our microbiome, so particularly food. Now, Postbiotics. What are postbiotics? Postbiotics are things like short chain fatty acids. If you've heard the term butyrate, um, propionate, there are a couple of other ones. But butyrate specifically, really important to the microbiome. And what is it? It's supportive of the gut lining. So we have our microbes that actually will produce short chain fatty acids, and that production of short chain fatty acids is protective of the gut lining. But then the bacteria also will then utilize and feed off of the short chain fatty acids. So in having a good, healthy, diverse, and robust microbiome, then we're giving the bugs the things that they need to be supported and to feed. There is an example of a bug that is, a bacteria that is somewhat new to our understanding. It used to not be able to be purchased in supplement form, but now it can be. But it's called Akkermansia. What's interesting about Akkermansia is it is a GLP-1 agonist. So super cool that we have these bugs that are doing naturally what they're supposed to do. When we have the pharmaceutical industry and the natural health, the peptides, that kind of thing, that are producing these GLP-1s to help to support us. So if we start to learn how to support the bugs and the mechanisms that produce GLP-1s naturally, then maybe we don't need to take GLP-1s, right? But there is some good data behind microdosing GLP-1. So there's so much coming out that is just new to our world and starting to figure and understanding this stuff. It's so interesting to me. And GLP-1s, they impact our gut health, they impact our cognitive health. So we want to be able to support these things. But coming back to Akkermansia, if we're not feeding Akkermansia the polyphenols that it needs, what it's going to end up doing is feeding on the mucus, which is incredibly important and necessary in our body. It's going to feed on that instead of feeding on what they're supposed to feed on, the polyphenols, and it starts to degrade the mucus and starts to degrade our gut lining, right? So think about leaky gut. So we want to have that really great balance of the right microbes, but sometimes the commensals like Akkermansia can become out of control, right? You get too much, and they're just not getting what they need, so they are going to take what they need. Things like certain types of yeast, they are commensal to a point, they can become pathogenic, right? So anyway, going back to it, so prebiotics, probiotics, postbiotics, super important for our conversation today. But really, I have so many notes and so many things that we could talk about. But I wanted to try to do my best to focus on what it is in our food, our environment, all of these things that are creating a situation of more of an extinct microbiome, right? So our good bugs are going away. I mean, we can, anyway, sorry, I don't want to jump ahead too much, but we need to take a step back and really know the things that are important to supporting our microbiome. And this goes way back from, probably before we were born, the stuff that, for some of us, that where we need really, really intense support because maybe we were C-section or maybe we weren't breastfed. All of these things are really important to benefiting our microbiome and building a robust microbiome. So getting into it, there is, just like I said, there's microbial loss can begin before we're even born. So we have C-sections, and sometimes C-sections are necessary. A lot of times they're not, right? And so I would hope, my hope is that for anyone out there who is considering it as an option, then you go vaginally. We're created so beautifully that when we are giving birth, we are inoculating our children with good, healthy, what we hope is healthy, a good, healthy microbiome. This is how they get their microbiome, right? It actually gets into their mouth and it's on their skin and all over them, and they're getting good, healthy bugs from us. Now, if mom doesn't already have healthy bugs, then we're inoculating with bugs that are less healthy. There's a bug, so I'm gonna hope that I get this. Let me see if I have this in my notes. I want to make sure that I get this right. Yeah, I don't have it in my notes here, but many of you have probably heard of the bacteria. It's Lactobacillus infantis, right? So it's very specific to babies. And I know this, and you do see it in supplement form, but it doesn't stick around. And it really is specific to babies to help them digest mom's breast milk, right? So it's not for mom, it's not for baby's health, it's actually to break down mom's breast milk. And so if mom doesn't pass along this infantis probiotic, then baby doesn't digest the milk well. And so then we have fussy, colicky baby, and we can't figure out why the baby's not doing well. And it's because it doesn't have, he or she doesn't have this microbe, is a high likelihood, right? And so, yes, we can support mom prior to birth with this infantis probiotic. We can support baby also after birth with this infantis if there's a situation where cesarean section was necessary. So also things to consider with a C-section is baby's first exposure is what's in that environment, in that operating room. So it's not mom, it's the operating room. So operating rooms are often sterile, or they may have other bugs that we don't really want to be a part of. That's not what we're looking for our kiddos. So we want to inoculate them with the right probiotics, the right healthy commensal bacteria, and not an OR. Just kind of makes sense, right? Let's see. Okay, so there can be a possible colonization with hospital-acquired microbes, Staphylococcus, Klebsiella, instead of what is beneficial, your Lactobacillus and your Bifidobacterium. Those are things that are really those are sort of our keystone types of bacteria, right? So we also then have formula feeding is really an issue. So breast milk is there for a reason. We have a trend. Actually, I'm hoping we're kind of moving beyond this, but we're having this trend where it's more back in the 70s and the 80s, I think, and probably before that. But my point is where we're feeding formula as opposed to babies getting breast milk. Breast milk is so full of healthy fats and healthy bugs and digestive enzymes and all of these things that are so necessary for building, and immunoglobulins for building the immune system, for building the gut. And if baby's not getting that colostrum, if baby's not getting what's called these HMOs, which is human milk oligosaccharides, that serve as these prebiotics for this Bifido infantis, then of course we have decreased microbial diversity, and then a poor immune system. So, Dr. Pop, how are you? Haven't seen you in a while. Anyway, so moving on. Let's see. So antibiotics. How many of you out there had crazy ear infections when you were a kid, right? The use of antibiotics over, I don't know if it's the last 50 years plus, is mind-blowing. And the amount of damage that we're causing our microbiome, and not just our gut microbiome, but our oral microbiome and all of it, because antibiotics very often just kill everything off. I have a friend of mine who has been really struggling, so really significant Lyme, right? So has been on lots and lots of antibiotics. She did a GI panel and she had no bugs. Like, she was virtually bug free. And we're like, how does a person become sterile like that? Which is also dangerous, right? So you really need to, I mean, for her, we've got to inoculate her and get her stuff going back. But it's a really scary place to be virtually sterile. It also is a place when that happens where we can have an influx of the negative, right? We can have bad bacteria that can come in and become pathogenic, or we can have pathogens come in and create lots of problems. So we've got to really be aware of that. That's kind of scary stuff. But the antibiotics that are given during labor can destroy the maternal microbiota that should be feeding an infant. So just crazy stuff. And then you've got the NICU. So there's exposure in preterm infants, these sterile environments with heavy antibiotic use, where these preemies are colonized by the hospital pathogens and the hospital fungi, right? So these things are not great for setting up a child for, can't see out of my glasses, a child for a healthy, robust future, right? This is impacting an entire future, not just, not just a microbiome, right? This is setting them up for mental and emotional health, for physical health. It's all of it. It's how they act in relationships, right? So, a really big deal. And so I kind of already said this, but mother's microbiome is the blueprint for the child, and so a dysbiotic mother is going to pass down dysbiosis to baby. Dysbiosis being, for those who don't know, it's just an imbalance in the good bacteria. So you can have, again, it's not enough of the good and too much of the bad. So if we are, this is good. So it's our children. I like this. Our children aren't born with resilience; they're inheriting dysfunction. So we got to support them from prior to birth, which is one of the reasons why I love the preconception planning thing so much, right? There's so many things that we can do to support ourselves prior to ever even conceiving. But then when we conceive and have baby, all these things that we can do to support baby on the way. So, okay, so I don't need to be repetitive here, because as if we're looking at early life, pediatrics and that kind of thing, of course, the kids who are on constant antibiotics due to ear infections, I think that what we need to do if we have kiddos who are struggling with ear infections or other chronic infections, sinus infections, we got to go back. Go back to what we were just talking about. Think about, where did they pick up their microbes? What's going on? And instead of just sterilizing them with antibiotics, going back and supporting their microbiome. Do we need to eliminate some fungus? Do we need to eliminate some pathogenic bacteria or opportunistic bacteria? Maybe so. But do we need to wipe out the entire microbiome in order to manage an ear infection or a sinus infection that's just going to come back because there's no microbiome to support not getting an ear infection, right? You're just going to keep getting these unhealthy microbes in that are going to continue to perpetuate these infections. And then the infections become more and more and more and more. So take it back and start to learn how to, which is the stuff that we're going to talk about here, but learn how to support the microbiome. I think that is really so much of the key to so many of the things that we're struggling with. Let's see. Another thing for kids, I hear a lot from my parents who I work with. My kid won't eat. They're so picky. I have to just give them whatever they're going to eat. So is it sugar? Is it, McNuggets? I think that's what it's called. Yeah, like the chicken McNuggets. The processed food, the unhealthy fats and oils. All of those things are going to destroy what microbiome they have. And I think that there is a really high likelihood that the reason they're so picky is because of the imbalance of the bugs in their gut. They're either not hungry, or they don't have the bugs to digest, or they hurt, There are a lot of reasons, or it can also be some of the mental and emotional things that, some control issues that can go back to the microbiome. So lots of these things go back to the microbiome. And so if you have picky kiddos, think about what can you do to support their GI. Let's see, vaccinations without gut support, right? So vaccines, drugs can be really harmful for the GI. So if that's something that you decide is something that you need to do, then you've got to understand what you can do to support the GI post-vaccination, okay? And then, this goes for kids and adults, but the over sanitizing, right? So whether it's sanitizing your environment or sanitizing your hands every time you wash your hands. So the antibacterial soaps, super, besides the toxins and the preservatives and all the junk in them, it gets into your skin and it's going to destroy your microbiome. So it goes back to the food that kiddos eat, the food that we all eat. Pesticides and herbicides, that's what they do. Pesticides are antimicrobials. We eat them, what's it going to do? It's going to destroy our microbes. And so think about what you're feeding your kiddos. Is it processed food? Is it even good, healthy, whole food, but maybe it's not organic? And I feel like I have to say a note on that, because organic isn't the end all be all. Organic is super important. We got to avoid the pesticides and herbicides as much as we possibly can. But it's more about knowing where your food comes from. I think that's more important than the organic. Organic really is just a federal regulation where they're making a bunch of money. And that's fine, because it does help to protect us, because there are regulations around the amount of pesticides and herbicides. But if you know your farmers, if you're growing your own food, if you know what's around you, that is more important than just eating organic food. I don't care if it's organic if you know how it's been farmed and raised. I think that's really what is more important about that. Okay, so we talked about this a little bit already, but I want to jump into the pharmaceuticals and some of the medical interventions. I think we've hit enough on antibiotics. They're just so damaging. I have patients who are just on nonstop antibiotics, whether it's for SIBO or for sinus infections or whatever. Why? Because they keep coming back. Why? Because you're not addressing the root cause. We got to know why. And does it go back to the GI? I think often it does. So antibiotics, just so scary. I have several, and over the years I've had several clients, and I have a patient right now on daily NSAIDs. One of those right now is the diclofenac. So an NSAID, I don't know the difference in that versus like the ibuprofen, but it's still a non-steroidal anti-inflammatory. They are super disruptive to the microbiome. And so this patient who I'm working with right now, who is super on the struggle bus, she's having a really difficult time and she's in chronic pain, so she's chronically taking diclofenac. So how do we unwind that, right? That's kind of the hard part about these things, because she's in chronic pain. What do we do to help her manage her pain and unwind the damage that the diclofenac is doing? So we have to go in, understand the root cause. We're in the middle of doing a bunch of testing right now, figure out what we can do to help her to manage. We can't ask her to stop her NSAIDs because she's got to be able to function in life. But we go in, we support the GI, we give her prebiotics and her probiotics, we understand, we try to learn why she's struggling so much, and sort of then build from the ground up and support. And hopefully as we're supporting, then and rebuilding nutrients and addressing whatever it is that we need to address, we'll figure that out when our labs come back. Then she, hopefully with the the guidance of her doctor, can then begin to come off or slow down with the diclofenac, right? So that's, so often that's the end goal. You're on drug after drug after drug after drug. How do we unwind things so those things can be minimized, even eliminated, of course, with your doctor. So let's see. So the mechanisms of these NSAIDs, they disrupt the gut barrier, they expose the epithelium. Super problematic, right? So what does that mean? So the mucus barrier, we were just talking about that. The mucus is supportive, is protective. We have to have that. It's not gross, right? Now we don't want an overproduction of mucus either, but we need to have a good mucus barrier that's supportive of our GI. And so if that's disrupted, if it's gone, we've got the Akkermansia eating it, and then we're taking NSAIDs, right? You can just go down the list of things that then, we start to create this leaky gut situation where the cells open up, things start getting into the bloodstream they're not supposed to. We've got this crazy inflammatory response and things go haywire. So let's see, also, yes, the translocation of bacteria and LPS. So LPS is lipopolysaccharides. Those get into the bloodstream, and they, like I said, they trigger inflammation and potentially autoimmunity. So lipopolysaccharides are unhealthy, mostly gram-negative bacteria produce these products that are inflammatory. And if they leave the GI and get into the bloodstream, it's really inflammatory. The body just gets really angry at these things. And so we can test for these things too, right? So, but we don't want to give the opportunity for them to get in the bloodstream in the first place. If they're there in the GI, we want to keep them from getting in the bloodstream, right? So it's important to be able to manage those. Oh goodness, there's so many things. I think on that I want to jump into statins, because how do we do this without getting into cholesterol? I don't think that we can. If you're interested, I've done a couple of cholesterol episodes, so you can go and you can find those. I think they're pretty informative. They give a lot of information regarding the management, what cholesterol is and how to actually look at cholesterol outside of what we're typically told in conventional medicine and conventional media, or mainstream media. But often, not often, I don't know how often, but what can happen is that LDL can be elevated due to lipopolysaccharides. So we have to remember, without getting in too deep to the necessity of cholesterol, which it is a necessity, we've got to understand why. So why is LDL elevated? So let's look at just a couple of things real quick. So cholesterol, we must have it. It produces, it's a precursor to hormones, right? Our steroid hormones, our sex hormones. It helps with cellular integrity. It helps with brain function. We have to have cholesterol. What we're told is LDL is bad and HDL is good. This is such a horrible way of looking at cholesterol. LDL and HDL are both necessary. LDL brings cholesterol to the tissue. HDL takes cholesterol away from the tissue. So one of the things we look at, what we're told is the higher the HDL, the better. Well, I would disagree, because if HDL is pushing 80 or higher, I'm thinking there's an immune response, something's going on. And we're not told that often. And I see it in labs. I see it. I'm like, okay, what's going on? It's a red flag that we need to pay attention to. LDL, though, if it's elevated, we're told that we need to take a statin because it's a problem. LDL is only a problem if we're inflamed. If we're inflamed, there can be a lot of reasons for being inflamed, but if it's elevated also, it might be going after and trapping those LPS, trying to get them out of our system. So we have to take a step back and wonder, okay, my LDL is elevated. What's going on in my body that's making this happen in the first place? We have to remember that the body is so beautifully and perfectly made. Its ultimate goal is to keep us alive. And so it's if it's producing things that we think are bad, then we need to understand why it's producing these things that we think are bad, right? And so we've got to understand inflammatory markers. We've got to understand our GI function. We don't just go and get on a statin because we have elevated LDL, because then what happens? We've got more LPS, potentially, more LPS running around the system, creating more inflammatory responses, pushing disease, pushing autoimmune conditions, pushing GI dysfunction, pushing, food sensitivities. I mean, again, on cognitive dysfunction, right? We're pushing things like Alzheimer's and Parkinson's and all of these things, because we're not addressing why this is all happening in the first place. So, kind of back to the foundation of it, always ask why. Don't assume that the body is not beautifully smart, that it doesn't know what it's doing, because it knows exactly what it's doing. We have to learn what it's trying to tell us, and then we have to learn how to support it. And it's unfortunate because it's not something that just comes to us, right? we have to go and search, and it's why I do what I do, because it's what I love. I love the research and I love looking into it. So I love this piece of it. But there are things that I don't love. I hate accounting, so I don't do it, right? So I give it away. Sometimes we've got to seek out the people who love what they do, so we can get better at optimizing our health, right? So, I think, let me make sure that I hit everything on the statins. I want to make sure. Let's see, a couple of things. So I'm just going to go through some of these notes here. So statins can alter bile acid profiles, which regulate microbial composition. Statins favor microbes linked to insulin resistance and inflammation. Really important to know. Increased systemic exposure to LPS, a bacterial endotoxin that triggers inflammation, obesity, atherosclerosis, and neurodegeneration. So I think, sort of the upshot here is statins may lower cholesterol, but if they're letting the bacterial toxins, leak into your bloodstream, is it really doing its job? Is it really fixing the problem, or shifting it, right? Yeah, I mean, it's crazy stuff. Always ask why, right? So another thing, proton pump inhibitors, or any kind of acid blocking medication, including Tums, right? Any of these things that we are suppressing, whether it's, suppressing acids, hydrochloric acid, or suppressing the production of hydrochloric acid, is going to be super problematic. We have hydrochloric acid, again, for a reason. These things are there for a reason. So if we're having symptoms, heartburn, indigestion, GERD, on into other GI issues as well, just to go and take a PPI or a Tums or whatever is going to cause lots of problems. It may not do it immediately, but typically we have this dysfunction because it's too much acid, right? It's being pushed too much, too far at the wrong time. Instead of being pushed while we're digesting our food, it then comes up after, like, oh, it's the heartburn, it's too much acid, it hurts, right? It's just there's enough dysfunction there where it's pushing it up too much at the wrong time, at the end of what we're eating. So we want to support the production, the proper and timely production of hydrochloric acid. We don't want to suppress it. Hydrochloric acid protects us from microbes, protects us from fungi. It helps us to break down nutrients, break down protein, helps us to break it down so we can utilize it and assimilate it. And protein breaks down into amino acids, which then help us build muscle and neurotransmitters and pretty much everything that we are. If we're not breaking these down properly and far enough to where these amino acid chains are still stuck together, we can't utilize them, or it's probably getting a little bit too far, but we start getting into a situation of molecular mimicry where our food that we're eating looks like something else, and the body's like, I don't like this. It can look like wheat or it can look like dairy. If we have a sensitivity, then we're eating something that the body thinks is sensitive to, and it's not. We're not breaking it down, essentially. So maybe a little too deep, but I still think it's super fascinating. That the body can work like this when it's still just trying to do its job the best that it can. So we need to think about the nutrients that, well, think about the sort of down the river situation. If you are taking PPIs, if you're blocking acid and you're not breaking down your nutrients, then what's happening with, your minerals? So you're not getting minerals into your bone matrix, right? And so what happens then? Well, oh no, I've got osteopenia. Why do you have osteopenia? Well, I've been taking PPIs for the last 20 years, right? That, or, a number of different things that are going to happen if you're not utilizing the nutrients that you're taking in. So these things are really, really, really dangerous, and I'm not saying that lightly at all. So I believe that they're indicated for about 2 weeks. And when they first came out, when they, the PPIs first came out, they were considered really dangerous. And now we can just get them over the counter. And so we're consistently disrupting our microbiome with this stuff, right? And we're allowing in pathogens, and we're not breaking down our food. So we have people who are on these for years and years and years, and I promise you it is impacting every part of you. They're difficult to get off. So most people can't just cold turkey. I've seen a few people do it, but you've got to do it slowly and steadily, and be supportive at the same time. You can't just get off, right? Because then it just hurts, because the body's going to rebound, and you don't want to have that happen. So you got to do kind of slowly, steadily, methodically, while supporting. Okay. Let's see. I've got so many notes here. So what am I gonna? So I think that thinking about hormones, birth control pills. I was on the pill for quite some time, and I knew the impact that it had on me emotionally and mentally, but I didn't really understand the impact that it had physically. But there's so much that, these synthetic hormones can disrupt our microbiome. So the the amount of dysfunction that it can cause, and the number of different types of things that it can cause, and we don't link it back to the fact that we're on hormones. That's the stuff that's hard to do, is linking it back. But when you're trying to understand why you're struggling with whatever it is that you're struggling with, then start thinking about, what are you taking? What's in your environment? Are you on contraceptive, synthetic hormones? What drugs are you on? Because all of these things are going to be disruptive. So we've got to understand that, on top of all of the other things that synthetic hormones can cause and are really problematic for people. They're quite scary. Yeah, I don't need to go into that, but just be aware of that. And if there are other ways of managing and not being on synthetic hormones, I think it's really smart. So, but the pill is linked to increased risk of yeast overgrowth and sluggish detox pathways. This is interesting. So synthetic estrogens and progestins, not progesterone, but progestins, which is synthetic, alter bile flow, gut motility, and microbial balance. So, your hormones are communicators. They would tell your body, would tell your body how to work and what to do and what to function, and they do everything to a degree, right? Communication is key, whether it's interrelational, communication with your spouse, or if if it's your microbiome and your body trying to, talk to each other. So, your hormones and your microbes speak the same language. How cool is that? So synthetic hormones often talk over them, or they just don't understand. They're synthetic, so the body's like, I don't know what this is. I don't know what you're doing. I don't know what you're trying to do. I don't know what you're telling me, and just becomes super confused. So food and toxins in the diet, right? So if we're looking at, things like processed foods, so lacking in the fiber and the polyphenols, the things that we were just talking about that support and nourish the microbes in our GI and in the rest of our body, right? So the other things, we've got things that are just flat out going to kill them. So preservatives are going to kill them. Pesticides and herbicides are going to kill them. I don't know about the herbicides, but the herbicides are still toxic. But the pesticides are just that. They kill microbes. It's the whole point of them. So they will kill the microbes in our body. So This is an interesting one that I have been learning a lot about, emulsifiers. We think that, I mean, it doesn't sound like it's such a big deal. And honestly, I don't know that I knew how big a deal it was until fairly recently. But the emulsifiers, think polysorbate 80, CMC, so they damage the mucus layer of our GI. So it increases gut permeability and promotes inflammation. Where do we get these emulsifiers? Well, they're going to be like in ice creams, and they're like thickeners, right? Things that where you don't want the separation, so you think like cream and milk, or ice cream. So ice cream, you take it out of the refrigerator and you eat on it a little bit, and then it melts and you put it back in, and then it becomes crystally, right? So they try to avoid that, and you do that by adding emulsifiers. Emulsifiers are destroying our microbiome. It's in all kinds of food and all kinds of processed food. So keep that in mind. I did not know it had that much of an impact on our mucosal layer. So artificial sweeteners, besides just being toxic and linked to Alzheimer's and other cognitive issues, they disrupt microbial diversity and glucose metabolism. We talked a lot already about pesticides and herbicides. If you know the term Roundup, glyphosate is Roundup. I am floored. This is a little off topic, and I can't. So we have commercials now every day talking about how there are these trials and lawsuits for glyphosate, and how we know that it causes cancer. And I go around my neighborhood, and I still see people putting Roundup in their yards. And right after that, they're going and laying in their yard with their dog. I'm flabbergasted, but I know it still happens. I have clients and patients who will talk to me about this, and I have to okay, the weeds are not the enemy here, right? And that's what we need to remember. The weeds are not the enemy. The enemy is the toxins that are killing all the goodness in us, and our dogs and our kids, right? It's destroying all the goodness, and we are setting all of us up for a true lack of being optimal, right? So it can go from just not feeling great all the way down to just being downright sick and riddled with cancer. I mean, it's scary stuff, but this stuff it's so important to stay away from the pesticides and herbicides. Let's see, high sugar diets. Yeah, for sure. So feed pathogens and fungi like Candida, and of course then promote insulin resistance. So Candida is a yeast that is normal and natural to the GI, to the vaginal tract, but has the potential of becoming opportunistic when we're dysbiotic, right? So when we have an imbalance of the good and the bad. And so Candida can be really frustrating. It's kind of like SIBO, right? We talked a couple of weeks ago to Jen about SIBO and managing SIBO and what we can do for that. It's important, though, to know that we don't just get these proliferation of these pathogenic or opportunistic bugs and yeast just because. Why did this happen in the first place, right? Again, it's that why. Keep asking the question why. So why is this happening in the first place? Often these kinds of infections are a secondary infection, not a primary infection. So what else could there be? So is it the toxins in the environment? Is it other microbes, parasites, worms? Sure. Can it be mycotoxin and mold exposures? Yeah, all of those things. So and then bacteria perpetuate fungi, and fungi perpetuate bacteria, and they kind of feed off of each other, and things go super haywire. So important to remember that you can't just sit there and eat a low sugar or no sugar diet and kill off Candida, because probably you're not addressing what is actually pushing the Candida or the SIBO in the first place. So keep that in mind. I want to take a quick break. I really could talk about this stuff for hours. It's so fun. But I do have this pulled up for those of you who can see it. I'm still not great at this piece of it. But we have our sponsor, Susan Drake, who is the founder, owner of Mountain Medical Concepts. She's amazing and has some amazing products that she that are specifically for practitioners to support their clients and patients. Um, we've been talking a lot about the GI, and so I've had this up a few times, this gut health slide essentially. The QR code is how to reach out to Susan herself to get information regarding the products that she has. But if you haven't already heard of peptides, peptides are becoming quite the game changer in the world of regenerative medicine, um, functional medicine, functional nutrition, that kind of thing, because of the ability it has to help the body to regulate, right? So there's mitochondrial function and health, and supporting pain, and supporting all of these different things. Well, these peptides for gut health are called gutides, right? And so we have these specific peptides that are really great for supporting gut health. And if you're struggling with autoimmune, Crohn's, colitis, things like that, or if it's considered an IBS situation, right? IBS is just the inability to understand what's going on, and so we call it IBS. So it can be all of these things that we're talking about. It can be IBS, but there's liraglutide, KPV, BPC 157, which is not strictly a gutide, but is sort of an overall well-being peptide. It's the BPC is body protective compound. Super cool stuff. And people they're using it for pain and inflammation, of course, for GI function, for mitochondrial function, autoimmune conditions, on and on. It's really cool stuff. So want to just give a shout out to Susan and what she's doing. These particular gutides and peptides are from New BioAge, so really great company. And I continue to dig deeper and deeper into the peptides as well. So it can be a lot of fun, and hoping to continue to learn about those. There's so much to learn, so many cool things. But this is a great product, great company. So reach out to Susan. You can look at New BioAge and look at what all they have to offer. Oh, I also put up here too, this is something I put together when I was talking about the oral microbiome, but I thought I would go ahead and put it up as well. So this is just kind of a little giveaway, right? So it's a booklet I put together that is an assessment on your oral microbiome, and then a little protocol for helping to balance your oral microbiome. So, you balance your oral microbiome, it's going to go systemic. It's going to help with the gut microbiome as well, and they're all connected. So I think it's kind of a cool little book, if I should say so myself. So feel free to check that out. You can go to the QR code there. You can just go to my link tree. That's just where it's going to take you, and so it's just a free download. So check that out if that's something that you're interested in. Let's see, moving on. Low fiber intake. We've talked a little bit about this, but low fiber intake starves short-chain fatty acid producers and impairs gut immunity. So fiber, we talked about short-chain fatty acids. They feed off of things like resistant starches. So what does that look like? Green banana flour, tiger nuts, raw white potatoes, no, that's not right. That is a fiber, but it's cooked and cooled white potatoes, and cooked and cooled starches. Rice, and cooked and cooled legumes. So there is something to the process of cooking and cooling these things that turns it into a type of resistant starch that then feeds our microbiome. So with some of these things, you've got to be really careful. If you're insulin resistant, if you're dealing with blood glucose issues, spikes and that kind of thing, you really want to be aware of what you're taking in. You can also support the GI with short-chain fatty acids with therapeutic supplementation, but you can get it through food as well. And so when I'm talking about green bananas too, I'm talking like green bananas. So they're hard, there's no sweetness to them, but they're really therapeutic and can be really beneficial for the GI. And at least for most people, I've not tested this on a ton of people, but should not spike blood glucose, because you don't have the sugar. You don't have the sugar that you have in regular bananas and green bananas. It's just all this super fibery, healthy, cool stuff, right? So think about eating green bananas. Not quite as fun as regular bananas, but much more therapeutic for sure. Okay, let's see. Oh man, we are at 11 o'clock. So let me see. I'm going to check out real quick. Chlorine. Chlorine's a big one. What's in our water? Chlorine. What do we swim in? Chlorine, right? So if you have the ability to go swimming in something that's salt and not chlorine, do that. Chlorine, it's in everything. Get it out of your water. Stop drinking it. Stop bathing in it. You can get a filter for your water, and make sure it's a good filter. Most filters are not good filters, so we can get into that later. But let's see, lack of nature, right? So when we don't go outside, we don't play with animals, we don't walk in the grass, we don't play in the dirt, we don't let our kids roll around. All of these things are going to impact our microbiome, so we need to build that up. Playing in the dirt's important, right? My husband often asks me when I'm gardening, do you want gloves? No, I don't want gloves. Now sometimes I need them, but I rarely will put gloves on when I'm just out gardening and doing things so I can get my hands in the dirt. It's therapeutic. It is, being in the earth is such an important piece to balance for our bodies. Let's see, environmental toxins. I've talked about those a lot, but they can be super disruptive. You know, phthalates, BPAs, heavy metals, so forth. All of those things are going to destroy our microbiome. Things that we don't realize that might destroy our microbiome: stress. Chronic stress is super problematic. Sleep deprivation, extreme and restrictive diets, right? So we can't restrict to such a degree that we're impacting our microbiome. A lot of people really are restricting, and this should be a whole other topic that maybe I'll do at some point, but my own journey through understanding my body and what it looks like to restrict when I didn't even know I was restricting, and sometimes I still do and don't know it. I don't get enough calories, so I literally have to focus on getting enough calories. It's interesting, super interesting, the things that I've been learning. So overtraining, underactivity, alcohol, right? Alcohol can be super problematic. What else do we have? That's kind of it. That's really what I wanted to hit on today. So I wanted to make sure that we understand the things that are truly destroying what is good, pure health, and it's a robust microbiome. So I also want to make sure that you understand that it's not about just going out and getting any probiotic. Even good probiotics, if we're not taking them properly, can cause problems. Some of them just don't do anything. They can be expensive, and you're throwing your money, down the toilet, literally. So we want to do it strategically. We want to make sure that the way that we're doing is right. We want to get as much through food as possible. Although I'm a big fan of supplementation, I'm a big fan of supplementing properly. I hate wasting money. Really hate wasting money. And I don't want my clients or my patients to waste money either. So doing it in the right way, taking the right ones. Yogurt, just going and eating yogurt is doing nothing but creating mucus, right? It's not healthy. There's a bunch of sugar in it. Even if it's plain yogurt, it's likely not giving you the bugs that it says that it's giving you. It's marketing is a thing because it works, and it works really, really well. So be aware, ask questions, ask why, dig in. And so the next time I do a show by myself, I don't remember when that's going to be, but we'll dig more into this because there's so much more to talk about. But at this point, I'm going to jet and go up. I've got work to do, but always feel free to ask questions. Let me know if there's anything that I can do to support you. You can go to the website, tastelifenutrition.com. Reach out to Susan Drake, who's got amazing products, both peptides as well as a really cool food sensitivity test. I should know what it is, and it's not coming to me right now. Sorry, we'll get it up there. I'll show you. And then some, see, my brain is not working for me. The Pinoe, which is anyway, it's a device that helps with understand your health, your cardiovascular health. Anyway, I shouldn't speak to things that I don't have notes on because I forget. So anyway, but But we'll talk more about those things as we continue to dig into all the things that she has to offer and other things that are that we have that will kind of go in sync with those things. So you can also go to tastelifenutrition.com. I'm Taste Life Nutrition everywhere, all the socials, the website, the things, and you can go to the website and fill out an assessment. Happy to reach out to you and chat about anything that we need to chat about your health. If I can help you, great. If I know someone who can help you, then great, right? I know a lot of really cool people who do really cool things. So I'm super blessed in that way. And that's ending my show with a lot of God's grace and gratitude, and the people who I know who are really helping people. They're so smart. So love that. And yeah, I hope you all have a great weekend. We'll see you next week, same time, 10 a.m. Mountain Time, streaming live on KUHSdenver.com. Have a blessed week. We'll see you later. God bless. Bye.